watchers.
A beautiful thing to see, Melbourne finally waking up and rising in solidarity with each other, regardless of your political leanings, regardless of your religious leanings. It's just a beautiful thing to be here with all these happy, wonderful and free people, and yeah, we're not going to take it anymore.
So guys, authorities have indicted and arrested Igor Danchenko. He was, as it turns out, one of the main sources for the now infamous Steele Dossier. Many implications here for Russiagate. More importantly, this is also an indictment of the media writ large.
Welcome to the New Flesh Podcast, the podcast you deserve. My name is Jonathan Astro. With me is Ricky Allpike. Ricky, what's going on?
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. Okay.
Can't believe we haven't said that on the podcast yet.
Yes, I don't know. Like it's I applaud the message, and I like it, but it just hasn't. I don't know. No, you know what it is? It's because we're in Australia and, it's a little bit out of context. And if you said it, you say it out loud here and it sounds strange because people are like, what? And you've got to explain everything.
Yeah.
And then it sucks once you do that.
Once you have to explain it all, it's shitty. Which I had to do to my wife, like at great length. You
go, so anyway, the Democrats, and they're like, wait, the what? And you go, oh.
She's like, which one is that? Are they the Trump ones or?
And you just go, oh, forget it. All right.
Yep. I've lost you.
Anyway, I saw James Bond.
Yes. How was it? Well,
it was an interesting experience. It's called No Time to Die. It was good to be back at the movies. Now, so the listeners of this show might recall that, for better or worse, I was a little concerned, as some people were, that this was going to just be some sort of extended lecture at the audience about, toxic masculinity and whatever else these people want to lecture you on. But after seeing the film, it wasn't that. It was okay as a film, and it took some risks here and there, which I didn't mind. But overall, it wasn't that good, and not successful in their missions. So what ended up happening was, I think there'll be some kind of course correction next. I think we'll go back to basics, and I think we'll return some of the things, because some of the notable absences, I've already complained about this to some people. So title sequence used to be, sexy women, guns, all that stuff. Remember that stuff?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's always a big part of the movie. There was like no chicks in that. There's like a shot of a navel at one point, and I'm like, oh my God, like they're so hot under the collar. It's just guns and underwater shit and whatever. They've banned the use of the term Bond girl on set, apparently.
Right.
There was a lot of interviews between the producer, which is Daniel Craig, and the Broccolis, that's the other producers, and the director, all at separate times saying pretty, dumb stuff about, ranging from Sean Connery was a rapist in Thunderball to, how they've got to bring Bond into the 21st century. So much talk, and they brought on Phoebe Waller-Bridge of Fleabag to kind of gussy up the script and, I don't know, make it more modern or whatever. But ultimately, this is just a woke capitalist exercise. So, you always follow the money. Okay, so this is where they've gone wrong. This is why it won't be successful. Is because this movie's made to sell Omega watches, Heineken, and Land Rovers, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to take a stab in the dark and suggest, I know it might be outrageous, but the big fat middle of the graph of people who buy those things are men. We would have thought, yes?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, what was the makeup of the audience? Were there lots of men in the audience?
Oh, it's almost all men. This is a male date movie. So this is the movie that you go to the movies and you take your wife or girlfriend to it, okay? It's not really I wouldn't call this a solo male movie. Like, there are some action movies where it's a solo. This is definitely a male date movie, and it was almost all men and their appendages, okay?
Right.
So, which isn't to say that women don't like Bond, but most of them, it's made for men primarily.
Well, I was going to say on that title sequence issue that, and we know that a lot of women enjoy looking at other women. This is a fact.
Katie's one of them, and she complained. She was like, because there was a problem with the women in the film as well, like, because they banned this word. There's one woman who's from the last movie. She said that, and Katie was like, how come they've made her look so mumsy?
Yeah.
Like she was mumsy the whole time. There's the new 007, who's that the black girl, and then there's there was 10 minutes with that girl of the minute, Anna Diarmas or whatever her name is, from Knives Out and Knock Knock and whatnot. She's everywhere, that chick. Anyway, so they've made a big point of this new 007 being an ass kicker, and this chick being like, the modern masculine woman, I guess, and then independent, all that. She's got it under control. But then they ruin it by having this 10 minutes with the other chick who does a full True Lies style action sequence in like a dress with a big split up the leg and a garter and everything, where she is just a superhero, like just kills everyone, does the most ridiculous stuff, like, sort of teams up with Bond for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then is gone from the movie. And it totally destroys all the work they do with this new 007, because you're like, well, isn't that sort of, what you're trying to not do?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, so ultimately, this movie didn't help women. This movie wasn't really a successful lecture because it's too interested in, ultimately, as a capitalist exercise. All it ended up being was a not very successful product for an audience that they now don't understand.
Yeah.
Because, as I've said before, the problem is 100% that they've started the conversation with, how, Bond, how these people like Bond. Well, let's get these other people to like Bond as well. Or they've gone like, how these people like Bond and they're all dummies and we hate them, but we want them to buy Heineken and Land Rovers and Omega watches. And everyone goes, yeah, go on. And then they go, well, anyway, let's start chipping away at all the things that are essential to this franchise.
Yeah, yeah. And what made it popular and successful and bankable as well.
Yeah, so it's just a really confusing. This happens again and again now, because look, I don't care about this stuff really. I mean, I just want stuff to be good, And what I'm claiming is that I don't think you can have a split focus and it be good. I think that when it comes to art and creation, I think you need to be 100% in on a particular audience, demographic, market, whatever, and give everything to them. And to the exclusion of I know that's a word we don't use anymore, to the exclusion of everyone else. What that means is, I love Dirty Dancing. I'm an outlier because I'm a man who likes Dirty Dancing, so I accept that I'm in a smaller group. I'm not going to suggest that they remake Dirty Dancing starring, written by, conceived by, and only for men. That's not what I want. Okay, and that's not going to be good.
Yeah. And in saying that, though, you're not advocating for turning Bond into some sort of sex fest porn movie.
It never was, though.
No, you want it to be to have the successful elements in it, and to work within that sort of framework.
Well, we talked about this. Like, is he even a hero, though? Like, the point, he's an anti-hero, and it's a fantasy. And the whole point is that he's fucked in the head, and that, yes, he does nail chicks or whatever, but it's usually for Queen and Country, and it's to use them up and to move on. And there's always a femme fatale chick. Look, all I know is that Katie and I were both disappointed about this, about the way this is all played out. So I just think that it's way too self-conscious, and I think Hollywood and the people who live there have overstated how much everyone else cares about all this shit.
Yeah.
Just make a great film. And yeah, you're right. I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be. Yeah, some kind of like chauvinist exercise.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. What I'm suggesting is that GoldenEye and Skyfall and Casino Royale got it right.
Yeah.
That they got it right. Like, yes, we do want those moments where they say, oh, you're a dinosaur, Bond, and he's got to deal with that. Or there's a new kind of, sort of a modern thing that he's got to deal with. That's great. Love all that. But it's when you change focus completely to, like, Daniel Craig's a producer, and because he's rich and because he's now, entering that private jet, rich category, he now has to play that game where he's got to say, oh no, I've really got to start like lashing myself and publicly talking about, all the stuff you'd expect to hide, to cover the fact that I'm really rich. Do you know what I mean?
Now, why didn't you lead with the fact that 007 is now a female? Is she the new 007, like, moving forward?
Well, she won't be, but she is in the movie, and
because what I mean, not to give too much away, and I know nothing about the plot.
Hit the 30-second button now if you don't want to hear some spoilers.
So Daniel Craig, he's in the film as James Bond, yeah.
Yes, but he's sort of retired. Like they're closing out his reign by and they do that. Like it's actually a complete story. So his whole set of movies is a complete story if you look at it. And but look, what they do, I think obviously, because they've tried this before. They talked about doing a spin-off with Halle Berry's character in fucking Die Another Day or whatever it was called. And the movie didn't do that well, and then it didn't happen. So
yeah,
it's like, this is the same shit. Like, if this movie was the Joker, then you could bank on there being spin-off series, spin-off movie of, the Spanish chick and that new 007 chick. But it's not going to happen because the movie wasn't successful because they blew it, okay? It's as simple as you like. So
you're hopeful that it will return to what it's supposed to be.
Of course it will. The backlash, as our stories, lately have all shown, is that the backlash has started. People don't, and look, people vote with their feet. What have people gone to see? The Joker. Okay, that's what they went to see. That's what Squid Game. That's what people want. Okay, they want real good stuff that, and not stuff that is, as I say, chauvinist or male or whatever. That's not the point. No, we want truth. We want truth, and we want it to be good, and that's what will prevail in the end.
Well, speaking of voting with your feet, perhaps we should move on to briefly mention what the fuck's been happening in Melbourne in the last week or so.
How is it in Alcatraz?
I think it's a bit exciting. I'm getting a bit jazzed up about it because we've seen some of the biggest protests in Melbourne of the last week or so that I think we've seen for decades in this city.
Completely downplayed by the media, by the way.
Completely downplayed by the media. And the rest of our show, we're going to be talking a bit about the media and sort of their role in these sorts of things. So in Melbourne, for those who don't know, there's a new pandemic bill that's being introduced into Parliament that will give the Premier, Daniel Andrews, basically full powers to declare a pandemic at any time, regardless of any sort of health advice. And there's a lot of concern in the community across the board. We've had a lot of lawyers come out and sign like an open letter, and a lot of people on the streets have been protesting, and from all walks of life as well, and from all political persuasions and ages and stuff like that. And so it's estimated 60,000 plus have taken to Burke Street and Spring Street out the front of Parliament here. And again, the media, the ABC, they don't give numbers. They say, thousands at the protest. There's been protests of thousands. And they always depict the protesters as extremists, as, right-wing, anti-vax.
Well, they focused on that one lunatic who bought some gallows and
yes, yeah. So someone did bring a gallows prop and, talk about, this is for you, Daniel Andrews, and blah, blah, blah. But, there's always going to be nutters that come out to an event like this because nutters live on the streets. That's the first thing. And, they like a bit of a gathering,
Yeah.
So there's always going to be some nutters there. I've got a clip to play that actually interviews a few people out on the streets. This is courtesy of Sky News, and it just kind of gives you a sense of the average person being out on the streets.
Today, what I've seen is the whole circuit of Victoria, being the rich, the poor, the workers, bosses, school teachers, you name it. Everybody's here across Victoria coming to tell this government they need to wake up to themselves, that we no longer wish to be dictated to.
A beautiful thing to see, Melbourne finally waking up and rising in solidarity with each other, regardless of your political leanings, regardless of your religious leanings. It's just a beautiful thing to be here with all these happy, wonderful and free people, and we're not going to take it anymore.
Well, it means a lot. I mean, I think a lot more people compared to last week and the week before. Everyone's woken up. Everyone can see what's going on, and I'm glad finally people are coming out of the their houses and marching with us.
We don't want the pandemic law to pass. We don't want Daniel Andrews to get any more powers. We want lockdowns to end. This isn't freedom. We believe in free choice, no coercion. That's why we're here.
Left our country to come to a free country, and now we are in the same issue here with all lockdowns and all of this stuff, like a communist country. I'm so upset all of this stuff around us. Please kill the bill. This bill, it's not helping us. This is not freedom anymore, and we can see what's happening around us.
We do not want to see this bill, the pandemic management bill, go through the House next week, because it's very dangerous for every Victorian. So we plead with the government, all our upper house MPs, please vote against it. You were put there by the people, for the people.
Some breaking news from last night, I think, is one of the Labor a Labor politician called Adam Somyurek has actually come out and said that he'll vote against the bill. So if he does that, it means they don't have the numbers in Parliament to pass the bill, and it will, at a minimum, delay it. If all things go well and they can't get this thing passed before the end of the sitting period here in Parliament, and we go into sort of the Christmas break, then apparently, because the emergency orders, I think they expire on the 15th of December. I think if that's the case and the government can't pass anything, it means all restrictions are off.
I hope that happens.
So do I. Yeah, it means absolutely there's no restrictions at all anymore. So, and I think the government, that's why they're pushing so hard to get this pandemic bill in, where they can just sort of decide when restrictions are without any sort of parliamentary oversight or any sort of committee or any sort of body that they have to sort of appeal to.
I get the feeling they've stopped communicating with the public. Like they've completely stopped selling this message. Like, if this is such an important thing, why haven't they succinctly and informed the public?
I don't know. I just think it's such a tough sell. They're just trying to rush it in, and they do, apart from this Adam Somyurek guy who's going to vote against it, like if he didn't do that, they'd have the numbers to do it, because they've basically got their three independents that need to vote their way. They've sort of got them on a leash, and they'll do basically the government's bidding here in Victoria. So I don't know. I think it's just an arrogance as well that they can just sort of push this thing through. I mean, they didn't even release any details about this bill. It was very secretive until they actually tabled it to Parliament. Usually a bill gets sort of shared around before it makes it to Parliament. So, they were very secretive about that they were actually formulating this bill. It's also interesting to sort of compare it to New South Wales, which we've done on many shows. So, the New South Wales Premier has put off extending the state's emergency powers until next year, and Brad Hazzard, the Chief Health Officer over there, is not very happy about that. The Australian reported that Mr. Hazzard took the proposal to a party room meeting on Tuesday, where multiple MPs challenged the necessity for the powers to be extended until March 2023. So, and it looks as though Dominic Perrottet is not going to extend those state of emergency powers. He's going to let them lapse. So, and that's important, because there were people in Victoria saying, well, New South Wales are doing it. Like, they're about to extend the emergency powers. Like, you don't have a problem with that, do you? Because that's a Liberal government over there. So they can't make that argument anymore.
Which is a really mature argument.
I know. It's silly.
What about them?
Yeah, it's very silly.
Man? They're doing it.
But it is concerning that the media really paints these protesters as loons and anti-vaxxers and far-right extremists, and which is a shame. It's very dishonest, and it's something we're going to be talking about today. This guy called Kyle Rittenhouse. I was sort of aware of him, but he sort of came to my attention a bit more this week. Through a few podcasts and stuff that I've listened to. And yeah, so I'm sure everyone in the US knows who this guy is, but for our Australian audience, Kyle Rittenhouse, who's now 18, was 17 when he shot dead 2 people and injured a third during unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin last August. So in Kenosha, they were experiencing protests, arson attacks, and heaps of looting.
Riots, you might say.
riots, yes, you might say, which was sparked by the police shooting of Jacob Blake. And Blake, a black man, was shot 7 times by a white police officer, leaving him partially paralyzed. And of course, 3 months earlier, we saw the death of one Mr. George Floyd. So Rittenhouse, he drove to Kenosha from Illinois, which is about a 30-minute drive. His social media accounts show an interest in policing, guns, and support for Trump. All red flags in the eyes of the liberal media. Rittenhouse claims he traveled to the city to protect buildings from being looted and provide first aid. He has many family members who live in Kenosha. He offered to protect a used car business. So it's estimated that the 3 nights of devastating riots caused $50 million worth of damage. Before I talk about the media coverage, let me just sort of run down his rap sheet. So Rittenhouse faces 5 charges here. First-degree reckless homicide is the first one. Joseph Rosenbaum chased Kyle Rittenhouse in a car park and threw a plastic bag at him. A reporter who witnessed events claims Mr. Rosenbaum tried to grab Mr. Rittenhouse's gun, and this led to the defendant shooting him in the head. The reckless aspect of this charge means prosecutors do not need to prove Kyle Rittenhouse intended to kill Rosenbaum, but he caused the death by acting without regard for human life. So that's the first charge. The second charge is first-degree reckless endangering safety. So the journalist Richard McGuinness, who witnessed Mr. Rosenbaum being shot, claims he was in the line of fire. Prosecutors say this means his safety was recklessly endangered. Then the third charge is first-degree intentional homicide. So after killing Mr. Rosenbaum, Kyle Rittenhouse was chased down the street. He tripped over. One person screamed, "That's the shooter." And the video appears to show the second victim, Anthony Huber, laughing at Mr. Rittenhouse and attempting to hit him with a skateboard. Then there's, the fourth one is attempted first-degree intentional homicide. The fifth one, first-degree reckless endangering safety. That's the rap sheet there. And the media, they've fashioned an almost entirely skewed narrative around Rittenhouse and his shootings. The more the trials dug into the events of that night, the more that we've seen just how cynical, partisan, and outright deceptive the media coverage has been. So basically the media have seen what they desperately wanted to see, which is a problematic white man. And it seems the case is not supporting that narrative.
Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old vigilante.
Kyle Rittenhouse, a vigilante. Kyle Rittenhouse, the armed teenage vigilante.
A 17-year-old vigilante, arguably a domestic terrorist, picked up a rifle, drove to a different state to shoot people.
Kyle Rittenhouse, a guy who's deeply racist, went with weapons to a Black Lives Matter protest looking to get in trouble. He did. He murdered a couple of people.
Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old kid, just running around, shooting and killing protesters.
You see the 17-year-old who was radicalized by Trumpism, took his AR-15 to Kenosha and became a killer.
A white, Trump-supporting, MAGA-loving, Blue Lives Matter social media partisan, 17 years old, picks up a gun, drives from one state to another with the intent to shoot people.
A 17-year-old boy who drove across state lines with an AR-15 and started shooting people up, including a guy with a skateboard.
The interesting thing about law courts in the US, and I don't think it's does it happen in all cases that they're filmed and broadcast? Because you can watch this live, can't you?
I think there's different rules in different states and different courts, and because they're not all filmed.
No. Well, I guess the high profile ones.
Discretionary though.
Right. Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just because, obviously we remember the OJ case as being
a circus,
an absolute circus. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I just think the filming doesn't help the situation really. But in this case, maybe it does, because the facts really aren't stacking up against the charges. So I just want to run down what the media's left out of this story, okay? So possibly the most widely used phrase by the media is that he crossed state lines in order to rain hell upon people who were merely protesting in defense of black people. So the media never stated that Rittenhouse has many relatives in Kenosha. They want everyone to think that he's basically a state outsider, which he's not. He does have connections to Kenosha. All three of Rittenhouse's victims were white, something the media seems to never mention.
Awkward.
Which is awkward. There's no evidence has emerged suggesting Rittenhouse harbours white supremacist views either, although he's constantly called a white supremacist. The media also characterised the protests in Kenosha as mere assemblies designed to express sympathy for Black lives, but were in fact riotous looting mobs whose actions harmed Black businesses and Black lives. As we know, a lot of these riots are impacting Black communities just by the fact that they're destroying Black property and Black businesses, you know. And I think this tweet from Democratic Representative Anya Presley sums up the media coverage nicely. She tweeted back in August 2020, a 17-year-old white supremacist domestic terrorist drove across state lines armed with the AR-15. He shot and killed 2 people who had assembled to affirm the value, dignity, and worth of Black lives.
Wow, what a narrative. Irrefutable.
And so quickly after what went down, you know, I mean, it's not like she tweeted that, you know, a year or 2 later when we know all the facts, you know, I mean, she just jumped on that straight away, you know.
Hot take.
It's just amazing. And here are some more facts the media left out. So the day of the shooting, Kyle Rittenhouse started out by cleaning graffiti off a school. Then during the night, he was defending the used car dealership. When he was defending it, he was chased by a guy called Joseph Rosenbaum, who reached for his gun. He's the first victim. Rittenhouse was then chased by a growing crowd that were yelling, "Get him!" A guy tried to hit him with a skateboard. As I said, he was then shot. Another guy pulled out a gun on Rittenhouse and he was shot and injured. So
when he raised the gun.
When he raised the gun, that's right. So some in the media are actually changing their position, you know, and here's a headline from a recent Young Turks article. Journalists grapple with misconceptions about Rittenhouse narrative as trial unfolds, by Anna Kasparian.
She's crazy.
Is she?
No, this is a good mea culpa. I think you should read this, but you should look at her on YouTube. She's crazy.
Right. Okay. So at least some in the media are actually saying, well, you know, the facts aren't really working out for us here, you know. But it just begs the question, why? You know, why did many in the media leave out or downplay the key facts in this story? You know, I mean, journalists have so little curiosity these days, you know, so little interest in uncovering the truth. And, you know, identitarianism has just warped contemporary journalism. You know, they see themselves as crusaders for wokeness and enforcers of correct thought rather than pursuers of the truth. And they've 100% bought into this hyper-racial narrative of white privilege, you know, and Black victimhood, the 1619 Project. And they can't coolly analyze real-world events anymore, you know. Because some of the media, you know, the Young Turks have come out and, you know, said, oh, you know, maybe he's not a white supremacist, but some of the media have fucking doubled down, you know. So Kyle Rittenhouse, he took the stand a few days ago, and during examination, he broke down into tears, and some have suggested that he's actually showing signs of PTSD. And Vox has described Rittenhouse sobbing in court as a tried and true strategy for white men in trouble. He was appealing with his tears to certain white members of the American public. And a writer for The Guardian said that such public displays of white male emotionalism are really a political tool, and that his weeping was not for the tragic events, but rather was an expression of the indignant entitlement of white men thwarted in the enforcement of his own privilege.
That is a perfect example of someone writing like they just got out of college.
I know, exactly.
That's a thesis. They're writing their thesis. And you go, no, it's not a thesis. This is news. You're writing the news.
Well, that's what I was thinking today. Like, back in the day, journalism was, it was more of an apprenticeship. You know, you went to a paper or something, and you were a young person, and you were learning from other journalists, and you sort of worked your way up. And
Andrew Sullivan talks about that. He's got a lot of stories about starting in Britain, London, like, you know, I suspect Fleet Street or something. I don't know, like somewhere where it was all happening.
Yes, yeah.
And starting in the mail rooms sort of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And then working your way up.
Yeah. Well, I think you would get a broader range of a divert, to use a really in term, a diversity of sorts, which is, a diversity of political persuasion.
Oh, that doesn't
perhaps,
count.
A diversity of class as well, perhaps,
Fuck that. No, sorry. You're the alt-right. When we say diversity, all I mean is some melanin or something.
Yeah, that's right. Diversity on the outside, but conformity on the inside.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, and I think we should return to a position like that where journalism is, taken away from these woke colleges a little bit and brought back to the street, which is what you'd have a deep connection as a sort of an apprentice journalist. You'd have much more of a deep connection to your city or town, wherever you were reporting news for. You wouldn't come out of college sort of expecting to be the editor straight away of some news publication and go out there, fighting the fight and the woke fight and trying to change people's opinions and be on the right side of history, But I also think this is a clear case, really, of reverse racism in some of this coverage. I mean, back in the day in the Deep South, people would characterize accused black people as scum and maybe morally alien, but now we're doing the same thing to white people. This is kind of madness, don't you think?
Yeah, well, of course. I think it's you shouldn't have any prejudice when you're being a journalist. Like, you sort of have to be apolitical, and you should be interested in the truth wherever that leads. But we know that is not what happens because of the stakeholders. Do you know what I mean? So if you're writing for a legacy media operation, Russell Brand's talked a lot about this. Like, so if you're writing for a legacy media operation, you've got advertisers, you've got, who knows? There might be big pharma donors or whatever who are involved in your big media operation. But also, these people don't seem to want to get down. Well, do they even pick up the phone? I don't know. But they certainly don't hit the streets and go and talk to people.
Yeah.
In the way that we used to understand journalists, like getting their little notepad out and getting out of the office, going down to the corner or to the person's business or whatever, and talking to the people and witnessing things yourself, obviously, but gathering information on the ground. Not just we're not journalists. We're just sort of pundits. But the thing is, the people who are writing all these articles, they're doing the same fucking thing, but they're calling themselves journalists. They're just sitting in their home reading another article, secondary article, maybe reading the dot points from Associated Press, which is a compromised outfit by the sounds of it anyway. And then sort of punching out this thesis crap. Like, what a useless thing that person wrote before.
Yeah.
Why don't you actually go and try and interview people and get down on the streets and get to the truth and look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm going to follow the truth wherever it leads me. Yeah. And that might end up, not going to places that I want to go, but I have to because that is what it is. We need to get back to that.
So I believe Rittenhouse is just awaiting the jury's deliberation, which will happen just sort of any hour now.
But why do these fucking court cases, it's just a court case. It's not a referendum on any particular issue.
Yeah.
It's not a referendum on white people or black people or Trump or Biden or guns it's not. It's one person in a specific situation being tried for specific crimes, and being judged by a jury of their peers.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. And so this crap about the judge getting death threats and, the usual thing in America now, which is, the jurors are scared to, seemingly scared to
convict.
To
acquit. Yeah. Or to do their job, of course.
To do their job because they're worried about a fallout, Now, there's obviously a legislative problem there. I'm no expert in these matters. I don't know anything really. But I don't understand. We need to make it the case that if you threaten or even imply to threaten a juror or a judge, that you need to go down. You need to go down real hard. Because, and I don't understand why, because they're talking about, maybe calling in the National Guard and stuff. That's appalling that that's what they have to do.
Yeah, yeah.
What kind of democracy are we witnessing where a court case If you've got a problem with the court case, then you need to have another court case, or then you need to write to your, your leader. You know what I mean? Like in your area, because this whole thing of like, oh, when a court case doesn't go the right way, whichever way we think it should go, whatever, we're going to burn the place down.
Yeah,
that is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah,
that's disgusting behavior. You know what I mean? And I don't know. 2020, there was so much talk last year of, these are peaceful protests, and like, just let people have their moment. And is looting really looting?
Yeah.
And like, oh, they just tried to burn down a courthouse. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
And you say, I'm sorry. All of that is grotesque.
Yeah.
And it's got to be put to a stop. So,
well, if you think about it, like if the governor of Kenosha would have had the balls to get the National Guard out on the streets when the Jacob Blake riots were happening, then this kid, Kyle Rittenhouse, he wouldn't have got his gun out and gone out there to play cops and robbers in the first place, and we wouldn't be in this situation. I mean, but the governments just seem to want to give protesters their moment. Like almost like it's a healing moment or something, that they go out and set shit on fire. I mean, that's not on, and governments need to say, yes, you can protest, but destroying property and beating people up and chasing people and setting shit on fire, that's not acceptable, and we're not going to stand for that shit. And sure, Kyle Rittenhouse, the guy's a fucking kid. He was 17 when he went out there. Sure, he sort of came to it with some good intentions, trying to protect, and the thing with him cleaning up the graffiti from the school. Yeah, that's all good. He's just a dumb kid. Like he shouldn't have been there, and it was a dumb idea to go there. But should he be going down for 30 years to life, or something for the situation that he was in?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Well, I look forward to seeing how this plays out, and
for sure,
because it'll end up being something's going to happen.
For sure, yeah. If you enjoy what we do here on the New Flesh podcast, there are a number of ways you can contribute to the success of the show. Consider supporting us financially by becoming a Patreon member and donating monthly or yearly. Alternatively, you can donate money through the Buy Me a Coffee platform. If you're strapped for cash at this point in time, there are a number of other ways to support the New Flesh. You can give us a rating or review through Apple Podcasts. These help others to find our show and help spread the word. Or you can tell your friends about us. Don't underestimate the power of a podcast recommendation. And now, back to the show. Sheila, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Ricky. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay.
I need the news.
Oh, you're there. Oh, okay.
What's been happening? Yes, I'm here. What's been happening in the world?
What did you think? It was just the Ricky show today?
Yeah, I thought it was just Ricky does offensive chat today.
Okay.
But that's the other podcast. Okay, here we go. Outraged mum calls the police after watching rock group's front woman urinate on a fan's face in front of horrified audience that included minors in Florida. Oh, look, you guys love that one. Her name is Sophie Urista, and
Urethra.
That's her stage name.
And she is the front woman of the cover band.
I'll piss on your face. What's it called?
The Brass Against.
Well,
I love that it's a cover band as well. It's so not rock and roll.
Is it a cover band? No, but like they've got it all backwards. You don't need to be that rock and roll when you're a cover band. You can just play, horses and like some Bryan Adams and whatever you need to do. You don't have to go, no, fuck you. Hey, Pittsburgh, go fuck yourself. And like, and say, you, hey, look at this, and piss on someone's face. Like,
well, she was singing Rage Against the Machine, so maybe that inspired her. I like the way James Gordon for the Daily Mail has done the little hotlines underneath. A male fan was brought on stage and lay on the floor as Eurista squatted over him. She then emptied the contents of her bladder all over the bald-headed man.
Bald-headed?
Why are you going to take pops at his appearance?
I know.
It's very evocative, though.
Female audience member called 911 to complain, saying her 16-year-old witnessed Eurista's antics, but she did not file a police report.
It's great. Well, I don't know what the law is there. It could be lewdness.
Well, Jim Morrison got arrested for doing a lot less. I know that was in 1968, but
What do you mean? Wasn't he wanking?
Maybe it was simulated.
How is that less?
No, well, I think that he was suggesting it. It wasn't. I don't think
that's
it
right.
was.
Whereas this was a woman pulling aside her knickers, standing up.
Well, doing so, I guess in this modern world of biohazards, I suppose, could be worse.
Well, if she only opened an OnlyFans account, she'd be killing it.
Well, I think it's really this has done a lot for their public exposure, so that's good.
That's
Right.
great.
Maybe we need to piss on someone's face.
Oh
John.
God.
Yeah, okay.
Sheila?
I don't know who.
Oh God.
All right. If you would like to be pissed on by either John or myself, hit us up on the socials
Or Katie.
and we can organise something.
Katie could piss on you.
Katie? Okay. She could piss on me.
Well, I was thinking of the person, but we could piss on you too, I guess. You can get some splashback or something.
Okay.
Anyway, moving on.
All right, moving on. Knife-wielding man threatens to kill staff at a takeaway shop when they tell him he can't have hot chips because the kitchen is closed.
Come on, I've wanted to do that.
I have too.
Yes, that man, he's a hero. Let's open up a GoFundMe and buy him some chips. Seriously.
Well, and this has happened in Perth, Australia.
Do you know, I was just about to say the reason I moved from that side of the country originally, but part of it was because
I couldn't get hot chips.
I couldn't get. We went to a bar or something or a pub, and the kitchen was shut at 7:30 or something.
I was just gonna troll and say 7:30.
It was though, and I was and this was in a tourist place, down in Freo, and I was just like, right, this place I'm done with this place.
Well, when you moved from Perth to Melbourne, Perth still did not have Sunday trading, so shops were closed on Sunday. People around the world and people on the east coast of Australia, that blows their mind that you can't go to buy some sneakers or something on a Sunday because everything is closed.
So random to buy a pair of sneakers on a Sunday.
It's the Lord's Day. You should be reflecting at home.
Well, you should. Yeah. And it just means that Perth is, keeping itself nice in the eyes of the Lord, and the rest of the world are heathens. So there. Good on you, Perth. Don't open the shops. Keep it all shut and keep those borders closed.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Would you buy a political correctness police bot? Trigger warning device for classrooms and parties sounds alarm when it detects offensive language or jokes.
Wow. Who's installed this? I want to know. Has anyone installed this?
I don't know. It's called Themis.
Themis. But doesn't it feel like Themis is sort of already here?
What do you need the bot for?
Yeah, you don't. You just need a person under 25.
Well, it feels like that the bot is totally redundant. Like it's I don't know.
Maybe all those green-haired and pink-haired 22-year-olds are just so burnt out that they need a bit of a break, and this bot will help them to they don't have the burden of having to educate everybody all the time.
But when you think about it, and I'm sure this will come up at our next the next after the next mano a mano, but don't you think Demolition Man has come true?
Yes,
that we are actually living in Demolition Man. Like this is. When I watched Demolition Man in the 90s, I was just like, oh, this is so silly. And then, well, I loved it, but it was just seemed like a real fantasy. Now it is a documentary. Like seriously, like I mean.
But in that movie, you were fined. Was it fined, or you had social credits taken away?
No, you were fined.
Right. So fining, I would almost prefer that. If I could just like pay a bit of cash and then it was forgotten about, that would be fine. But it seems like what we've got now is a step further, where it's more of a social credits thing. So
where and no path to redemption.
That's
so
right.
It's not clear what the rules are.
No, but you instantly lose all of your social credits, and then that's it. You're cast out. You know, you're thrown out of the city.
The weird thing is, like, if you're a part of a certain elite class, like in America, like if you're Jeffrey Toobin, you can literally whack off in front of your colleagues on Zoom, and then be inducted back into the fold, literally like less than 6 months later.
Yep.
Like that is staggering.
That was amazing. I could not believe that. And did you ever see the footage when he comes back and they actually interview him?
Yes.
About it's just so weird.
I did. I saw that, but to me, it just, as we say, like it's so confusing. I don't know what the rules are. So I don't know what these fucking robots are going to do. Like, because that's the thing. If the robots, if Themis is corrupt as most of the woke left, then it'll just turn a blind eye to certain people. Like if it likes them, like it'll just fine you for watching a Ben Shapiro video, but then, you know, some wokester, you know, can just, you know, lie, cheat and steal, and it'll just look the other way.
Or set fire to a
court building.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and a black-owned donut shop.
Yes, yeah. So Sheila, are you buying one of these robots for your kids for Christmas?
No, because it would just go off all the time.
You would be cancelled.
I would be cancelled in my own home. And I try to keep it PC, but you know, you're only human.
Yes. Well, that's Themis. Moving on.
Look, I'm just loving. This is the Australiana section today, because this is another one about Australian antics. Bizarre moment: trio fight, hug, and flee cops while tackling a very unreliable ute door before it all ends badly. So this is in Darwin, and it's on camera. A group of 3 guys, and this is one of the hotlines. There are fight scenes, love scenes, comedy scenes, and a police investigation. So these guys are trying to fix their ute. They start fighting each other, then they hug it out, and then they run away from the cops.
But apart from the cops thing, like we've all had nights like that. You know, where you sort of gone like, you know, it's got everything: tears, laughter, you know,
a ute.
So why were the cops involved? They were called because they were fighting.
I would say, yeah, because they were causing a fracas, and then the guys have thought they were under arrest, so you know they've hugged it out and fled.
Oh, ride or die.
Yeah, so
it's good.
You know,
it's good. It was like they're like Paul Walker and Vin Diesel at the end, you know, like on the run.
All right, let's get away from the Australiana for a minute. You've got to be kidding me. Chinese goat farm is using facial recognition to spot animals that are related and stop them getting incestuous. What a great usage for facial recognition.
One positive out of the many negatives of facial recognition being used in China.
But is this really? Is this what China's doing now? So it's like their empire is complete, and they just have their people under complete control. And they're like, "What do we do now?" Well, and they go, "I don't know. No one ever says what you're meant to do when you've got like a perfect working dictatorship. I don't know, fucking." Some goats that need some looking after.
We're going to breed the purest goats.
Let's check them out. And so it really feels like an exotic
usage
era. Well, an exotic era of the dictatorship. It's like, you know, you're telling the populace, and now we shall make the pure goats that we've always wanted. No, there shall be no fornication between goats of the same family. And everyone's looking at each other like when they're talking, going, fucking hell, like we've really got to move to Taiwan.
Okay, next up, dolls that let children as young as 6 fix their face fail spark outrage, as critics say they're offering a hideous message to youngsters. However, the brand has always denied that messaging is harmful, saying a failed makeover is not a failed person. 6-year-olds.
So this is a makeup thing if you don't have your makeup done very well.
Or is it a plastic surgery thing?
Yeah.
It's a doll that has bad makeup and you've got to fix her makeup.
Oh, you fix her makeup, not your own makeup.
No.
Oh,
no,
I see.
But you fix the doll to make her look
There's nothing wrong
pretty
with that.
and
I
perfect
don't-
and
yeah.
successful.
Like, because you're not giving it plastic surgery though. You're not like replacing the nose or lifting the cheekbones. You're not doing any of that. Yeah.
Still pretty bad.
Why is it bad?
Well, because I
But women
don't-
wear makeup.
They do,
Or
but
I'm going to say it. I reckon all women wear makeup.
okay.
Maybe there's
well,
maybe a handful that don't. But I feel like makeup is one of these third rails. It's one of these things that, like, if you talk about it, people go, "Shut up," and you go, "I know." It's like, we love it. We're okay with it. Makeup's good. Like, you love it. We love it. I don't get it. And everyone's like, I feel like people are hot about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, because I don't like wearing it, but I wear it so I don't have to keep dealing with people saying, "Oh, mate, are you okay? You look really unwell." And it's like, I'm fucking fine. I'm just not.
Are the
wearing
majority of
makeup.
those people women though?
It's everyone. It's especially men.
I've
Because
seen you.
Yes,
I've seen you, and it's not like the Phantom of the Opera. So
my own mum, before we'd go out, sometimes would say, "Oh God, I think you should put some lippy on." And and she was not a woman who endorsed makeup, at all. But so yeah, I guess it's just one of those things that is just so ingrained. But I don't really think it's good for little girls to know about makeup. I don't let my daughter see me put any makeup on. I never talk about makeup. I have it hidden.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think they need that shit in their lives. So
I get that. No, I'm sensitive to that.
Is this one of a case where I know some parents go, well, I need to give my kids all these devices early on so that they're not left behind. So when they're teenagers, that they're tech savvy and they're not the dunce in the class that can't work the iPad or can't work the computer. It's a similar thing where, so that when your 6-year-old girl becomes 16, they're all across the makeup and they can do it. And it looks good, like they're not left behind.
It might be. Look, it could be, because I must say I've had to help my sister with her makeup for many, many years. And I wish that she's a little sister. I wish that maybe she'd spent a bit more time sort of perfecting the art so I didn't have to help her out for special occasions.
So
but
she could have used this doll then.
Well, this is not new. I remember a doll that came out when I was a kid, and it was just like from the shoulders up. It was just like
it was a Barbie, a giant Barbie head.
Yeah, and you basically you did the hair and you did the makeup and stuff. And it was called My Model, and I still remember the shitty jingle, and I still sing it today. My model, my model. You can be creative with makeup. Yes, makeup.
Come on. If that doesn't go at the end of the show, then I don't know what.
That's got to go at the end of the show. That was fantastic.
I still remember that. And I sing it to my wife. I'm like, don't you remember this ad? Like this, we used to sing it I think it was in early high school. We used to run around the playground singing that fucking stupid thing because it was so stupid.
I know your wife wouldn't know it.
When you were when you guys were, I don't remember it because when you guys were at high school, I was overseas living in my mid-20s. Or
yeah,
mid
having
to
a great
late 20s,
time.
I think. While you guys were at school. All right, last up, and I'm just doing this because it's of the moment, but I do like where the Daily Mail is going with this. I like what you're inferring, Alyssa Guzman from the Daily Mail. Britney Spears' fiance, Sam Asghari, 27, is seen leaving a bank in West Hollywood with a wad of cash and wearing a Free Britney shirt an hour after her conservatorship ended.
Free Britney's money
Yeah.
into my pocket is what he's thinking.
Yep.
That's great.
This
It would be
is
good if he
so-
turns out to be the new villain, you know?
Yeah.
What an appalling headline. Someone's had to stake him out for that and said, oh, how's this? As soon as it ends, he's there with the cash.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know he was a little bit younger than her.
Yeah, she's 39, he's 27.
How exciting. I love the idea of like, you know, because she'd be like, because her main song would have been when he was like 12.
Yeah.
That's cool.
There you go. So that is me for the
All
week.
right. Thanks, Sheila.
Thanks, guys.
Well, some excellent bawdy stories today.
It's just what we needed, in this sea of, I don't know, where are we? We're in the muck. We're in the mire.
There we are in the muck and mire. So anyway, Russiagate now, this is big. So, but I'm not going to tackle the whole thing because it's too big because it's been going on for years. But essentially, in 2017, BuzzFeed posts an unverified dossier called the Steele Dossier. Now, it's just filled with reports that allege that Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, has deep ties to Russia. You know what I mean? So this dossier was compiled by a person who has claimed to be a former British intelligence official, and that is the Steele of the title. And he alleges, Christopher Steele, he alleges that Russia has compromising information on Trump. The allegations are unverified, and the report. Oh, and this is from BuzzFeed. The report contains errors. So this is what they printed on their fucking website. A dossier compiled by a person claimed to be a former British intelligence officer alleges Russia has compromising information on Trump. The allegations are unverified, and the report contains errors. So they printed it anyway. At the time, it was derided and celebrated by the media as sort of unverified, useful slime. So the dossier is a collection of memos prepared by this British spy, 2016 election. So this is from New York Times, a couple of quotes here, a couple of good ones, and they did some good reporting on this. The memos compiled by a research firm called Fusion GPS allege a multifaceted conspiracy between the Trump campaign of 2016, that is, and the Russian government to help Mr. Trump defeat Mrs. Clinton. The memos are also detailed unsubstantiated accounts of encounters between Mr. Trump and Russian prostitutes and real estate deals that were intended as bribes, among other claims about Mr. Trump's businesses. So one of the claims in there that became really famous was the PP tape.
Yeah, the PP tape.
The tape that,
I kind of want there to be a PP tape.
I know, everyone did. That's the problem. So a couple of quotes here. This firm, Fusion GPS, is paid to do research by a variety of clients, including political donors, corporations, hedge funds, and law firms during election years. The firm is mostly focused on political opposition research, digging up dirt on clients' opponent. So this is all very fascinating about what this sort of goes on behind the scenes here. Now, next up, this is the juicy part. So after Mr. Trump secured the nomination, Fusion GPS was hired on behalf of Miss Clinton's campaign and the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, by their law firm, Perkins Coie, to compile research about Mr. Trump, his businesses and associates, including possible connections with Russia. It was at that point that Fusion GPS hired Mr. Steele, who has deep sourcing in Russia to gather information. So now this didn't, and this is where it gets a little confusing because it didn't end up playing much of a role in what became known as the Mueller report. So this Mueller report was a sort of a separate investigation into collusion with Russia. It's all about trying to link Trump with Russia and saying that, they've got blackmail info on him and that he's a puppet for Russia. Okay, that was the whole narrative, and they tried a few attempts. The Mueller report came at it from a different angle.
But that wouldn't have arisen without this Steele dossier.
True, but this did. The Steele dossier kicked off the whole thing, and it really did consume the media for years, consumed every dinner table, I'm sure, for a long time. It was even included in The Good Fight, that drama. They did references to the PP tape and whatever. They were obsessed with Trump last year. So I stopped watching.
The Steele Dossier, we were told for 4 years, was based on this very well-connected British intelligence agent, this British spy who had very reliable sources deep in Russian intelligence. And as it turns out, he lied about that. His actual sources were basically operatives in the world of Hillary Clinton who were passing along gossip and using all kinds of speculation. So this entire narrative that got constructed on the back of the Steele Dossier is now being exposed as a gigantic sham.
This elaborate conspiracy theory was pushed fervently by a lot of people, including Rachel, and most famously by Rachel Maddow at MSNBC, who is unrepentant to this day. I watched a report of her just the other day, and she is just as unhinged as ever. It was also used by the FBI to warrant spying on the Trump campaign. So they used this dossier, which was now which we know was bunkum, as a way to get authorization from a court, what's called a FISA court or whatever, to spy on the Trump campaign. So now that we know that it's bunkum, that means that spying was not really lawful.
But wouldn't the FBI look at this Steele dossier and go, well, there's no evidence, so we're not going to do these fucking wiretaps, you know?
Well, it's a mess because, you know, obviously the FBI and Trump had a bad relationship, you know, but you know, at the time, the FBI was controlled by Obama. So I don't know. You know, who's to say? It's one of those things that there was a lot of people who dropped the ball. But basically, the desperation to get rid of President Trump, and this is from Glenn Greenwald, to see him as an existential threat, caused many in the media to adopt an at-all-cost attitude. I think it's best summed up by that creepy tagline under the masthead of the Washington Post, "Democracy dies in darkness." I think to me that is sums up this sort of one-eyed fervor about getting rid of Trump, and now it sort of looks a bit out of place. So there was a lack of rigor in the reporting that fueled what we now know was an elaborate fantasy, and in part funded with money from the Clinton campaign. And now Hillary was very disappointed that this dossier didn't come out sooner. So that was her big complaint. Not so much that she funded it and that you know, it was full of bunk, but it was that it didn't come out sooner, you know, before the election.
Yeah.
There was just no evidence being presented for so long. First, for the claim that it was Russia that did it, but then much more so for the broader claim that the Trump organization or the Trump campaign participated in things like the hacking of the DNC and Podesta emails. They were just the kinds of leaks from the CIA, from the FBI, from the NSA that come anonymously that anyone with any foundational journalistic ethos should instantly regard as suspicious, absent evidence being presented. And for a very long time, that was all we were getting, were anonymous leaks that were evidence-free coming from the security state.
And how much did I know the Clintons funded it, but would she have known directly about it? You know, because obviously she's got minions underneath her that would be working behind the scenes. And
well, look, this kind of opposition research is pretty standard stuff, you know, on both sides, I think. And you know, that they can track the payments to, like, there was a big figure, and then there was there is a direct link to that campaign and this dossier. You know what I mean? But yeah, as for, you know, the detail of, like, you know, what did she know? When did she know it? I don't know. Who's to say,
so there aren't renewed calls for her to be locked up?
No, it's not that sort of thing. But it's definitely, it's not a good look, and it sort of reveals the political process in all its glory. But this week, the real juice is that this week, our special counsel, John H. Durham, he handed out several indictments due to figures involved in the creation of this dossier. So this week, Igor Danchenko, an analyst who was a key contributor to this dossier, he's been indicted for lying to the FBI about his sources for his claims in the dossier. There's a couple of other people, a Clinton lawyer and another person. They've also been indicted for lying to the FBI and a range of things. Other parts to this story. So even Russell Brand has been labeled a right-wing nut for even engaging with this story. Right. You know, he did this wonderful video on it. A really, really good.
Yeah. I saw that this morning, actually.
Yeah, great. What do you think of it?
It's good. Yeah, I have to say I'm a bit out of touch here. Like, what the fuck happened to Russell Brand? Like, I always thought he was just like this larrikin stand-up guy / actor, and now he's like this guru for freedom and, you know, centrist thought.
He's been headed that way for a long time, and I'm fascinated that you've seen him in all his glory now, because I've watched him transform.
Right.
Like, you know, at the end of his Hollywood career, he was starting to do his little show called the Trues on YouTube, and then he actually went back and did some more study and things like that, and obviously he's done a real massive transformation. He's definitely a political pundit now, but certainly someone who doesn't. He is circumspect of. He's probably where, if you know, a lot of people probably should be heading. Like, he's very circumspect of both political parties, particularly in America, that they sort of are the same thing to a certain degree, you know. And he just said, and that's the thing, because he believes in discussion and robust argument and whatnot, and engaging with whoever, then he thought he could just say some facts and that would be okay, but and say what he knew to be true. But instead, he was totally slammed by the Wrap and a range of other places, and that is because these types of cultural issues have become, you know, they've totally broken people's brains, and those people who slammed him should be ashamed of themselves. Do you know what I mean? So, again, this is following on from that Rittenhouse story. The shame of this whole affair is that so many people have abandoned their integrity and their principles for fantasy. And for what? You know, for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I mean, was it worth it? Do you know what I mean? Like, so 2020, I think we should look back on that as the year that people's brains broke. And, you know, I mean, what could all those man hours and resources put into this Russiagate nonsense been used for?
Yeah.
Think of the money, the time, the resources, and the relationships it destroyed. Think of all the things we could have done. Maybe we could have won some of those lost souls from QAnon over before they went too far. Do you know what I mean? Maybe we could have reached out and you know, and at the end of the day, Trump was not a Russian agent. Okay, he's exactly what he always has been: a businessman turned celebrity with a big mouth, and definitely, you know, some probably dodgy deals all around the world. Not extraordinarily weird deals. You know what I mean? Like, I think the deals were dodgy, but as dodgy as anything as Clinton's done. Like, if you look into the Clinton Foundation and look into their businesses, I mean, fucking hell, it's the same sort of shit. His is a little bit more flashy. So people wanted this to be All the President's Men. They wanted it to be the Manchurian Candidate, but it wasn't. This was nothing like that. And they threw out their integrity, principles, rationality, and behaved poorly. And this is you know, it was to the detriment of us all, you know, and that's the real shame of what went on last year and what continues to go on, is that I think that it's such a shame that I say my side, our side, the left, the center left, whatever, really did just throw it all away, you know, throw away the principles, and it's really made me dark on all of it, because you just go, wow, like what does journalism mean if you have no integrity? What does journalism mean if you won't print the truth? Like, if you won't print the Hunter Biden laptop story, what does it mean? You know, like, so it's just been and the thing is, you know, you can not like Donald Trump. You could have got him on a bunch of other stuff, like legitimate stuff, but they wasted their time with this elaborate fantasy. You know, and
yeah, you're more likely to get him on something to do with tax, you know. Probably. But it's just like, it just became such a ludicrous thing, and like, but you really worry about people like that Rachel Maddow. I think she might be a lunatic, and she's not the only one. Like I think that like I feel like she comes across as absolutely unhinged, like unhinged from start to finish, like the sort of person that you're like, would you like to have a dinner with her? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, she seems crazy. Yeah.
You know, so it's one of those things where I think maybe people, and none of this helps the working class. None of this helps the people who need help.
Yeah. Do you think there are any winners out of this sort of media coverage? Like, do you think this sort of shit that's going on, CNN, particularly on the left, but also, the right, Fox News and stuff, they have their biases too, but that the winners are people like Russell Brand, who are doing their own shows and doing their own political commentary, and that the legacy media really will sort of croak it at some stage because everyone's just moved on to YouTube to follow people like Russell.
Well, look at the downloads on that video that I mentioned of his. There's millions and millions of downloads. That's way more than the audiences of these news outlets. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no comparison. Look at Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions of downloads. Do
you think that plays a part a little bit in the way that the outlets like CNN then cover the news, because they have to be so sensationalist, because they need, they have to be salacious so that people tune in,
Absolutely. It's the whole deal. Like, they, the more cover you can give your reporters, like the old days, then the better the reporting could be, and you've got to, but at the moment, like every story is clickbait. Do you know what I mean? I've complained about this. Even at the ABC, the government-run outlet in Australia, is clickbait, just filled with clickbait and filled with opinion pieces and stuff. And you just go, what the fuck is this? Give me the news.
Yeah.
Give me the fucking news. So, yeah, they've all had to just debase themselves completely. It really is just editorial. It's just creating, little echo chambers, playing to echo chambers. And it's totally not going to work because people voted with their feet. They go, oh, I like Russell Brand. I like what he has to say because he speaks without fear or favor about certain things. Do you know what I mean? Like, he might not always be right, but he's got courage and he's willing to say the things you're not. Whereas you can see it at some of these media outlets. You can see it playing out. Like, think about it. Is it at CNN where Cuomo's brother fucking works there?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's pretty awkward.
Yeah.
Like, so it's really that's I think that the whole setup is very strange. But that whole model of paying, like Maddow, despite her lunacy, was on the verge of signing a tens of millions, $20-30 million deal to renew, and then she didn't. I don't think so. I mean, what's your brain like on $30 million? Do you know what I mean? Like, and what's your brain like on $30 million plus white guilt, plus guilt of being now part of the Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, class, where you're like, oh no, like I actually don't know how much milk costs anymore. Like, I actually don't know how, I don't know anything about normal life.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about normal people. And in fact, the more I get along, like I see less and less people of color. I just live in my Central Park apartment and go to the French Laundry or something in LA, to have dinner, and it's all white people, and the help, they're all the people of color.
That's right. Yeah.
So what have you got to do? You've got to get on TV. You've got to rail the hardest. You've got to say, that's the masquerade. I can't believe we haven't talked about this more. Like, how come people don't talk about, these multimillionaires lecturing everyone? Like, why doesn't that come up more? Like, I don't understand. Like, why do we have to put up with Mark Ruffalo saying capitalism's the worst thing that ever happened, but he's got a net worth of $30 million?
Yeah.
Like,
that's right.
I don't get it. Like, why don't we say that you're an embarrassment? Like this, like, you don't care about it. Give it all away then.
Yeah.
Rachel Maddow, you've got a lot of money. You could probably solve a lot more problems than you do with your money. Like, actually, if you believe everything you say. Anyway, this story is a big mess, and I hope that moving forward, that everyone who, unlike the other side, I believe in redemption. I think we should get these mea culpas, and some of them are happening. Like the Washington Post have come out with they have retracted a couple of stories and actually fallen on their sword a bit, which is great. There's nothing. We should welcome that and say, yeah, good, moving on. And it should inspire better practice. It's not about revenge. It's about, but you do need to admit that you blew it and that you wasted everyone's time. And if you knew that it was bullshit at the beginning, like many people did, then, you do need to reckon with that. You can't just get away with it and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, well, there needs to be consequences for that sort of activity. Like if you knew that it was bumpkin, that it was fake, and you went ahead with it anyway, like there should be some sort of consequences. Surely at least someone needs to get fired,
Well, yeah, no, you can only get fired at the New York Times for saying words in Chinese that sound like the N-word or something. That's what happens.
Yeah,
People go, "What did you say?" And you go, "I was ordering lunch."
Yeah.
And they go, "Right, you're out of here. You're out of here, Buster." And you go, "But I've been here for 50 years." And they go, "Yeah, well, today's your last day."
Did you want to talk about cosplay?
Yes. So we'll finish off today by just covering this great article. It's only short. I'm going to read it out. Being LGBT has become cosplay for millennials. This is on Unheard, and it's by Gareth Roberts. So nearly a third of American millennials identify as LGBT, according to a recent study by the Arizona Christian University. While it's worth taking these findings with a pillar of salt, they don't seem enormously surprising, with an astonishing 39% of the younger cohort of 18 to 24 signing up to an increasingly bizarre rainbow flag. What does this actually mean? I'm reminded of my first experience of a Rocky Horror Night at a student union in the late 80s, with a variety of very ordinary middle-class youngsters adorning themselves in fishnets and cosmetics applied paint roller style, a dismal, sanctioned attempt at transgression, like a medieval carnival with everybody safely back tilling the fields the day after. Queer is merely an extension of such tourism. It's no surprise that the United States is the great leader in all things LGBTQ. This was, after all, the nation that codified pop music that was only very slightly different to the mainstream as alternative rock and turned it into a billion-dollar industry. The genius of corporate capitalism, expert at selling the slightly outrageous, has merely applied glittery varnish to the nails of its invisible hand. It's also deeply, tragically pathetic. You can't identify out of your whiteness. Even to consider adopting the customs or the appearance of other racial groups is haram. But roll up, come one and all for the LGBT for queer and for instant high status as a cool victim. This is the culture, such as it is, that anyone can appropriate. No questions asked, a permanent celebration with colourful flags and regular feast days. It is, of course, highly ironic that at the same time these jamborees and funnels actually morally neutral day in, day out, boring homosexuality is very much on the cultural back burner. That's so true. In the Western world, it's now heavily frowned upon for lesbians to even associate on the basis of same-sex attraction, either socially or politically, without including kinky straight men.
I love that.
I wasn't ready for that. Who has it transpired, perhaps surprisingly, are the most oppressed lesbians of all. So true. Objecting to this is apparently not just party pooping, but, according to Stonewall's Nancy Kelly, among others, next door to Nazism. When the dull, basic rights of homosexual people are concerned, allies and queers are either nowhere to be seen or tutting like that horrified maiden aunts of yore. So the findings of this survey maybe don't seem so outlandish. The culture that was generated back in the day by lesbians and gay men living with the unfeigned, not fun threat of exposure, plus the risk of blackmail and social opprobrium, is now a fun youth cosplay craze, as conventional, if not more conventional than were mods, rockers and goths. I say they're welcome to it. Fill your LGBT boots, millennials, with your naff posing. You're making the actual homosexuality you can never understand authentically, transgressively cool again. How good's that?
It's so good. It's summed up everything I've thought about this issue for a long time now. I always thought that coming out as transgender to your parents and everything as a teen was akin to, coming home with a nose ring or a tattoo or, black hair and goth makeup. It's just another fashion thing to stick it to your parents,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love how he's mentioned the whole gay and lesbian thing as well, which, it's you basically a neo-Nazi now if you're a lesbian and you don't want a juicy D, if you don't want to put a juicy D inside of you,
Yes, no, it is exotic. And I don't know when, the whole movement is so strange. Like it is like a weird, sort of glitter bomb party.
Yeah.
And I don't understand when they're going to get on with it. Like it seems like, at what point do we as I've said, it's an unserious movement because of this ludicrous flag, because of how many members it's got. It's sort of weird and wonderful mission. But at the end of the day, like, you know, I always say the same thing. Like, once we get the pronouns out of the way and whatever, what happens next?
Yeah.
Like, no, they never talk about what happens next. They never talk about, like, getting on with it, getting to work, you know, living your life, doing what you want to do. It's always this constant obsession with these weird categories.
Yeah.
You know? It's weird.
Yeah.
So,
and also this, you know, a third of American millennials identify as LGBT. You know,
ridiculous.
It's like it's peer pressure, or it's FOMO, the fear of missing out. You know, I mean, everybody's jumping on board. You know, it's like back in the day, if, you know, there's some craze at school, you know, whether it be yo-yos or marbles or some shit, and you don't have that crazed toy that came out that season, you know, you've got to jump on board. You pester your parents to get it, you know. It's similar to that, because really, if you look at it from a scientific point of view, if we're talking about, you know, homosexuality and stuff, like, there are pretty consistent stats to say that it's like around 5% of the population, right? That present as gay or lesbian, you know, whereas this is just like, it's a fucking free for all, and you can be whatever you want to be, and you know, I love how in the article he says that you can't change your race, but you know, you can be any sort of gender you want. You know, if you're a man, you want to be a woman, that's okay. You know, if you're a woman, you want to be a man, that's fine.
If you're a woman with a husband and you have sex with him, and you've even had sex with him and had a baby with him, and there's no other people around, like man or woman, and that's all you're doing, I'm not quite sure what it means when you call yourself queer in that situation.
Well, I know in that situation it has a lot to do with getting arts grants and council funding, you know, so you can be part of this, you know, marginalized group that, you know, there's set aside extra funding for those special people, you know.
Well, to me, it's so embarrassing. Like, you know, like, because aren't you sort of debasing the whole thing because you're a bit of a liar? You know what I mean? Like, aren't you a bit of a liar? Like, you don't like minge. Okay?
That's right.
You don't. And you like your husband's boring old dick is what you like. Okay? And, like, what's wrong with just being a lesbian as well? Like, when did being a lesbian or just a gay guy become such a crime? Like, I don't understand that. Like, lesbians, this is the real misogyny out there.
Yeah.
You know? They can't stand lesbians in this community. And they must hate them the most because they get the first letter.
Yeah.
LGBT.
Yeah.
You know? And they're like, oh, we'll see about that. You
Mm.
know?
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think that's another thing that Abigail Schreier has written about in her book Irreversible Damage, which is sort of looking at this transgender craze that's happening particularly in America amongst young teen girls, is that a lot of them are just lesbian, and there's this view that being lesbian is really uncool, you know, and that there's something wrong with you if you're a lesbian, and that perhaps you could be a man then, you know. I mean, maybe I'm just a man trapped in a woman's body, you know. So
maybe you just like minge.
Maybe you just like minge, and that's okay.
And that's
it's
okay.
to like
we
minge.
need to make being lesbian cool again.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we can do tangible. Like, make lesbians cool again. Make lesbians great again.
Yeah.
You know, like, what's wrong with just being a bit of a lesbian? You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But now it's been criminalized. It's just like, well, are you sure you don't want to, you know, cut off your bosoms and take puberty blockers? And it's like, well, do we have to jump straight to that? Is that
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad we could squeeze that in because, you know, the New Flesh wouldn't be the New Flesh without some LGBT...
some transplaining.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yes.
It is transplaining. So that is our lot in life, unfortunately.
Excellent. Well, that's the show for today. We are rolling on the Joe Esterhaus Film Festival. with next week we're going to be watching Showgirls, which is heaps of fun, and who knows what we'll talk about next Friday.
Well, I'm sure Rittenhouse will be wrapped up by then, and
we'll have a Rittenhouse update for everybody, I'm sure, when he gets 60 years in prison.
All right, well, we said what we said.
Long live the new flesh.
Long live the new flesh.
My model. You can be creative with makeup. Yes, makeup. Yes, makeup. Yes, makeup. Yes, makeup.